So you're a knife addict like me, and you have some criteria points you want to hit. You're on a budget. You want something better than budget steel, though. You want it made in the USA with ultra grippy handles and being on the larger side of pocket knives. Well, that's a pretty tight criteria, but I believe that the Gerber Edict in drop point might be exactly what you're looking for. Well, that's right, folks. Here we are, the Gerber Edict in drop point. Years ago, when this first was released, I did the black on black, more tactical version, Tanto blade shape that was released. And I liked it. There was definitely some things that connected with me. There were a few drawbacks. And in recent years, they have now released a drop point version. That's one of the main things that I wanted to see, was something that was more designed either for general utility and or the outdoors. And that's exactly what this knife has going on, but it also hits almost all those criteria points that I touched on earlier. This will usually go between $50 and $60, made here in the USA with 154 cm steel. It's just over 3.5 inches in blade length, and the traction is ultra grippy. So today we're going to take a look at what this blade has going for it. What are the pros? What are some of the cons? Because I'm going to tell you, this is not by any means a perfect knife. I think it's a good knife and something that if you're looking for all those checkpoints, you should definitely consider, but there are some things that definitely hold it back from being perfect. So we're going to touch on all of that today so that you can decide whether or not this Edict, regardless if you go with the Tanto, more tactical version, or this newer drop point version, might be right what you're looking for. All right, let's go ahead and hit the blade here, guys, on this Edict. Now, again, this is the newer version. They do still make the Tanto version all blacked out. That I originally tested and reviewed. This one now with drop point, and you can definitely tell if you have ever seen the original version or own the original version, they basically have given you almost like a modified Tanto. They took that exact same style and then just basically curved up the blade versus that abrupt angle, which I prefer when I'm doing outdoor tasks, you know, carving, whittling, I'm backpacking, hiking. You'll see some footage throughout this video of me on a hiking trip, you know, so I'm making feather sticks with it, food prep. You know, one day I went to the hardware store. We're building a raised box garden right now, so I'm opening mulch bags and potting soil bags with this thing. I prefer that over a Tanto blade. Got GT Jr. hanging out, watching Dad, learning all the stuff. Soon enough, he'll be doing his own videos. So you can see that, and it's kind of a cool, kind of modified Tanto almost is what we got there. So it's very long, straight blade into a short belly, so it's won't be quite as slicey as some other, you know, blades out there. But you got that really cool swedge. Looks really good, very tough, good, strong tip there. That is still precise enough to do cutting, but definitely strong enough to do that piercing and different things. You're not going to be worried about snapping that tip. The thickness, and it basically stays the consistency almost all the way down until the swedge is 0.1. So it's not overly thick, but it's not too thin either. And they hold it versus tapering it down. So it's got a lot of strength in the blade. Now, from the handle to the tip is going to be 3.75, cutting edge is 3.25. So you got a pretty big ricasso there. Would have liked to see that maybe a little bit smaller. Now the saber grind is also a good thing. So it's a nice and strong, beefy blade. Again, maybe not as slicey as a full flat grind with some of the blades we'll look at here in a few minutes for competitive options. But the relief edge is way better than the Tanto version that I reviewed about 4 years ago. That thing was as dull as a butter knife. This came really nice and sharp. And I think Gerber is doing better with their quality control even over the years since I first started this channel 8 years ago almost, and doing the reviews. I've seen an uptick in their attempt to fine-tune the quality control and get better edges on their blades. So this relief edge was fantastic. I didn't have to do any tuning up, and it really was slicey dicey and worked really, really well for all the tasks that I would put this through, regardless if it was, you know, carving shavings for a fire, which it would absolutely do well, food prep around the home, or just, you know, general utility. If you're doing harder work. And I do definitely feel like just the blade overall and just the whole design of the knife itself is definitely more of like a utilitarian design. This would not be a knife that I would say is like a it wouldn't be my first choice in an everyday carry unless you are always like working in fields and you know, doing backyard work and just harder. Maybe you work at Home Depot. Those type of things would be great. But you know, going to the office, going in and out of meetings, and you're just opening packaging for the most part and some food. There are better options that we'll look at. But the way I think it's focused, and if you're interested in this blade, is more for those type of environments, harder use, tougher environments where you want this larger blade that gives you a lot of strength because of that saber grind and really grippy handles that we're about to look at. I almost totally forgot. I believe I said it earlier in the video, but USA made, which is awesome, in Portland, Oregon, and is made with 154 cm steel, which is definitely an upgrade over like 420, which is what a lot of USA made Gerbers have. I like it. It's very rust resistant, holds a better edge than 420. It's right in that world of like VG10. It's a really good kind of middle of the road steel. I think that I don't know the Rockwell exactly that they're doing it all and everything, you know, but it seems to be a very workable edge, whereas I've had some 154 cm even from like Benchmade, you know, that's kind of hard to put a fine edge on. This is very easy to put a fine edge on from what I've found. It doesn't feel overly like chippy or brittle. So really happy with that type of steel that they went with. All right, guys, let's hit the deployment. Now, this has ambidextrous thumb studs, even though the pocket clip is not, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So they protrude nicely away from the body, very easy to purchase. Now, I believe on the original one, they were pretty sharp. These seem to be milled a little bit better. And obviously, you could hit it with like a Dremel tool if it wasn't still to your liking. It does have kind of a honeycomb stack look to them, bites in nicely. And so particularly like with gloves on or something like that, it'd be very easy to deploy. It's not thrashing my thumb, but I can definitely feel it, you know, when I want to deploy. I can get it without a wrist flick, which was not the case on the original Tanto. If you remember going back to that video, that thing was brutal, and I had to work about a month of elbow grease and even some gun oil to get that thing to open up. This out of the box was a lot better in even the drop and close, and then in the open. And if you just do a slight little flick, it'll open no problem. So I don't know if that's just quality control issues or if it's something else, if they've fine-tuned it over the years. I will say that I appreciate Gerber because I feel like they do listen to customers, they do tweak things, and so even I believe in that original video I said, man, I'd love to have a drop point version. So I mean, they've done that. I don't think it was just me saying that, but you know, they offered a drop point. Now you can get it in this version or the Tanto. So the deployment is much better than on my original Tanto version that I had. It's still pretty stiff. There's a almost think of like a slip joint, you know, first catch right there that you have to overcome. So it goes right here and it catches and wants to stop. So you have to overcome that with that little flick. And then you do have that lockup. Nothing really to write home about. It's a good lock back design. Because it's all polymer, I can feel like a slight wobble in every direction, just ever so slight. So it's not as tight as some of the competitive options that we're going to look at here in just a moment. It's definitely functional for, you know, what I would use in everyday tasks and things like that. There's just slight rock, you know, because of, I believe, all of the polymer, and there's not really any stainless steel or anything else, you know, going on in there. There aren't any bushings that I am aware of. I believe it's just, you know, screwed right onto the polymer or maybe Teflon in there. So the lockup and deployment is fine. It's nothing to write home about. It's nothing that we're going to see competitive options that are better here in just a moment, but it's decent and it can get the job done. So the pocket clip is kind of a mixed bag. The first thing is, I'm always looking out for you lefties. It's not ambidextrous. There's no reason why it couldn't be. They could have easily just tapped that in on the other side. I'm assuming there's some metal in there so they could screw in, so they could easily have done that on the other side. The thumb studs, you know, it's all completely ambidextrous, so I don't know why when they updated this blade, granted that's the easier part, just grinding it a slightly different way or laser cutting it a slightly different way, but you know, they could have easily done that, and I think the knife would have definitely helped to have that. Secondly, the Gerber is, you know, etched in there. It's nothing like super flashy. It has a decent ride, being, in my opinion, the Tanto version is supposed to be for like law enforcement, military, and then this version for like outdoor hunting. It's utilitarian, you know, it's beefy, it's to get the job done, and so it protrudes probably about an inch, so it's easy to grab. Some of that texture is easy to grab, pull out of your pocket, no problem. It will protrude slightly, and then you do have a lanyard hole that you could easily get 550 paracord through. So there's some good tension tension on the pocket clip, and they actually have this little polymer glass reinforced nylon bit, and so it's not up against this texture, in which case it would be almost impossible to pull out of your pocket. So they really thought through that. That's really good. The flare is a little on the high side for me. I was a little concerned, but actually when I went out in the woods, because I kind of forgot from the original Tanto version, let me just cut away to that and just show you what my experience was when I was doing some hard like spear making with this pocket knife. So even though the flare is pretty obnoxious on this, I was expecting it to actually cause a lot of problems with this type of cutting, but I'm not really feeling it. I still want to kind of like bend it down if I can, but it's not, it like just fits perfectly in the crook of my hand to where, I mean, I could do this. I could make 10 of these and the pocket clip would not be bothering my grip. So at least that's a good thing. So there you have it. It's decent, absolutely will get the job done if you're a righty. I probably will take a pair of pliers and just try to push that flare down just a hair, just so it doesn't scratch cars and things like that when I am using it. But it'll absolutely get the job done. Just wish that they had made it ambidextrous and maybe dip that flare slightly. All right, guys, let's hit that handle. Very cool. They changed it up a little bit for this, what I know they're trying to pitch more as like an outdoor knife, the Tanto version being the more tactical, because that's black on black. This is being that satin finish. And then this black and green kind of combo. It's cool. It's kind of like a OD green color to it. The handle material is GFN, so glass reinforced fiberglass nylon, I think is how that goes, is what GFN stands for. So no liners to speak of, so that's something to consider in there. So there's definitely like there's some give, there's some flex, you know, that type of stuff, just ever so slight because of that harder polymer, and then the rubberized outer mold, which really reminds me a lot of like their Gator traction and that type of stuff. So it's very, very grippy, very warm to the touch, no sharp angles. So that's really good. So extended, you know, holding in your hand and gripping and using, you know, it's a very functional knife in that way. So you're not gonna lose your grip. So they really did well on that traction. Gerber tends to do that really well with a lot of their outdoor kind of focused knives. So the handle is 4.75 inches overall. It is 0.56 on the overall thickness, contoured very nicely. It's not like squared off or clunky. It's very rounded, ergonomic. That texture is really grippy and just feels really good in the hand. And then it weighs 3.75 ounces because of the no liners. So that means that's going to be a really lightweight folder. You're not going to feel it in your pocket. I really dig that. That connects with me for sure. So that's all really good. You got some jimping cut in here, but again, because it's all kind of rubberized polymer, it's not sharp and doesn't cause any problems. And then you have that little bit of texture around that locking mechanism. And then you got that top and bottom guard there with that polymer, giving it really good grip in that regard. And I wear large size gloves, as many of you guys know, in here on a regular basis. And you can see that I got plenty of room to spare. Reverse grip feels really, really good. So there's really no issues with the handle whatsoever in how it was designed. It's very ergonomic. It's going to feel really good, and you're going to have very heavy traction without it feeling like this really bitey, like when it's all either like aluminum or G10, you know, it can really start to kind of grate on you a little bit. This, because it gives and it's rubberized, I mean, it feels very, very comfy in the hand, but giving you really, really good traction for a lot of different uses. All right, guys, so we'll go ahead and hit price, as I've been kind of touching on throughout the video. For the materials and for being USA made, it's a great price point. I picked this up for 60 bucks on Amazon. You can find them actually as cheap as like 52 bucks at Blade HQ and GP Knives last I checked. And don't forget about Smoky Mountain Knife Company. They may have it as well. So I'll have links for you guys below. So between, I'll say 50 and 60 bucks, I mean, that's, you're getting a lot of knife for that price point with the materials, designing, all that stuff. But there are some heavy hitters, and based off of some of the things we touched on, maybe some of the drawbacks, these are things you definitely have to consider. I think the heaviest hitter would be the $50 new cold steel Voyager in AUS 10A steel, made in Taiwan. The slightly larger blade, not by much. The cutting edges are actually almost the same length, but a wide, full flat grind. You got a swedge there, so still very strong. The difference would be that the action is a lot smoother. The handle is even bigger and fuller. The pocket clip is ambidextrous, and the locking mechanism is amazing. It's super strong, super tough, and the AUS A8 AUS 10A steel from edge retention tests and things like that is slightly better than VG10 or 154 CM on most cutting and wear resistant scales, and Cold Steel does a great job, you know, with always with their heat treats and stuff like that. So I would argue it's as good, if not better, than the steel on the Gerber, and you're paying at least the same price, if not even possibly a little bit cheaper, and it's a rock solid, super strong blade. So that's a really heavy competitor against the Gerber. A few others that I'll run in first for lockbacks, and then I do have a liner lock here that we haven't seen in a while for competitive options. But here's the LT lightweight version of the Buck 110 now. You can get those for like 25 bucks or less. Now, obviously not as good as steel as the 154 CM, but you're getting about the same blade length again. Similar lightweight features, lockback design, the all light polymer. Now you will have to put it in a pouch, but depending on how you're carrying this, is this more of an outdoor knife? Maybe a pocket clip isn't as big a deal to you. And obviously, if it was, there is the now Buck slim versions. Again, the steel won't be quite as good on the edge retention, but very similar in lightweight. The pocket clip is ambidextrous. It's a hollow grind, you know, so it's not quite as durable, I would argue, just in toughness that the Gerber has. But those, again, will run you about 25 to 30 bucks. So there's definitely a competitive option out there. Now, I like the detent, or excuse me, the locking mechanism in the center versus the back on Bucks. So I'm just giving you guys food for thought. You know, is the Gerber really the best? Now, it's a good option, but my argument would be that's probably, I'll leave this guy, probably not the best option. And I would say the Cold Steel is the best option in this size range. And then depending on some of the features you may be interested in, whatever it may be, you know, then the Gerber is definitely in the ballpark. And then I'll throw in the Ontario Rat Model 1 in D2 steel, made in Taiwan, full flat grind, very similar edge size, great edge geometry, 90-degree spine. Liner lock, I'll argue it's pretty close to the strength of what you're going to get on the Gerber. It's not as strong at all as the Cold Steel. But four-way directional pocket clip, good full big handle, definitely heavier than the Gerber, and probably about 45 to 50 bucks. So right in that price range as well. It's just another competitive option. Deployment will be a lot smoother than the Gerber because it has those epic bronze bushings. So guys, just a lot of features, capabilities out there for you to consider, weigh with this Gerber, because I mean, I don't care if you buy the Gerber or not. I just want to give you guys data and info so that whether or not you gravitate to the Gerber or not, and to show you what else is out there. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks so much for joining me today. And I hope that this video has been fun, informative, pointed out the pros, but then also a few of the cons that we've touched on today with this edict. And I want to hear from you guys. What's your experience with the blade? Have you enjoyed it if you already own one? Maybe you own the original and now this just makes you want to get the drop point version. Or are some of the aspects that I touched on just non-starters for you? For me, again, it's hard to find all the things we touched on, and particularly at that price point. So it's absolutely a good knife, but by no means a perfect knife. So I look forward to hearing in the comments below what your guys' feeling, experience, and whether or not it's something that makes sense to you to start putting in your rotation and collection. Guys, thank you so much for coming over today. Check out the other video popping up. Subscribe if you're not a current subscriber. I invite you to also check out Instagram and Facebook, throwing up content there all the time, projects I'm working on, things that are coming down the line. And finally, don't forget that you're never alone. We're here with you. We care about you. And always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and we'll see you out there.